So hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Learning How Your Organization Can Thrive with a Single Source of Truth.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back again for another great AIM webinar, this time with our friends from Crawford Technologies. Now look, today organizations must manage an ever-increasing volume of information. We all know this, and what's more, this information can be found in databases and content repositories, business systems, and any number of applications both inside and outside of the organization. So as a result, it can be difficult to rein in all of these elements into a cohesive content management approach. And for years, we've all been working towards a consolidated approach to content, but is a single source of truth even possible today? And if so, what are the benefits of moving to a consolidated approach to content services? Well, that's what we'll be exploring in today's webinar with Harvey Gross from Crawford Technologies. I'll ask Harvey about the advantages of moving from legacy systems to cloud-based content service platforms, the pros and cons of various migration strategies, and the benefits and pitfalls to consider in a consolidated approach to content management. In the end, organizations must address the challenges of content integration, team collaboration, and data silos to optimize the benefits of intelligent information management. So get ready for another great session today. But before I formally introduce Harvey, I do want to say, as Teresa mentioned, we want to hear from you too. After all, we're a big community of experts and practitioners, so I'd like to encourage everyone attending today to participate. Please feel free to chat amongst yourselves in the chat section. And if you have a question for Harvey along the way, please enter them into the Q&A feature. Q&A is where I'll be looking for your questions, and I will attempt to get some of them into the flow of the show, and we'll certainly have a few minutes also at the end for your questions. All right, let's bring our guest aboard today, Harvey Gross. Harvey is the Senior Vice President of Strategic Sales at Crawford Technologies. Crawford Technologies is an award-winning global provider of high-value solutions for high-volume documents. They help streamline mission-critical transactional communications, such as bills and statements, across all channels and formats. And Harvey is with us today to talk about searching for a single source of truth. So Harvey, welcome to the program today. Welcome aboard. Where are you calling in from?
Okay, thank you very much, Kevin. Really appreciate it. Calling in from suburban Detroit, where I've lived most of my life, except for a 9-year stint in the Boston area.
Suburban Detroit. Interesting. I was just watching a program about Detroit the other day and about the renaissance that's happening in Detroit. I'd like to learn more about that. I had no idea you were from Detroit, but welcome aboard. Thank you for being with us today. Let's get into the subject, this single source of truth, and let's get a little background to get us started. Now, according to research conducted here at AIM earlier this year, the number of content management systems in organizations is on the rise. Indeed, over the last 10 years, the number of systems managed by AIM member organizations has gone from about 3 on average to 5 separate content systems on average, and about 15% of AIM member organizations have 7 or more systems. So organizations are adopting, it seems, an increasing number of content systems to handle the variety of needs. What do you see happening in the industry now that's making this the right time to talk about a single source of truth?
Well, I think we have to understand a little bit of that background. And as you said, the surveys don't lie. There's this explosion of content services systems within organizations, multiple silos, we like to call them, which are either departmentally oriented or as a result of mergers and acquisitions. So we've got, 14 different places, and pick a number from 1 to 50, and you're probably right. There's content stored in all of those. And the content oftentimes is different. We like to think that we're in this little niche in the content industry where we're really not unstructured data. We're certainly not structured data as it appears in the database, or what has been referred to as unstructured data, scanned documents, Microsoft Office documents. We're in this area that we coined a term of semi-structured, and that's the stuff, that's technical term, stuff that is originated by line of business systems, invoicing programs, composition software, So it's that stuff that is destined for ink on paper and used to be mailing to customers, members, constituents. What is that? I mean, that's credit card statements, it's bills, it's invoices, it's explanations of benefits that are printed every single day and mailed every single day in almost ridiculously high volumes. If you look at some of the major banks in the country, major banks in the world, 50 million customers. That means that 50 million statements go out every month. So what do we do with that? Where is that stored? And if I can share my screen for a moment and figure out the combination lock that does that, I just may be able to get that done. So we can share. Right now we're sharing nothing, and I appreciate that. So let's talk about what we call legacy archives and the legacy archives of this kind of semi-structured content. First and second generation platform, and generally mainframe or client server, relational database. And the drawbacks to these legacy archives in view of cloud is that it's all relational database. It's difficult to change that as business reasons change. The content itself is based upon legacy printer definition language formats like advanced function print. The content services layer, not so much, because really it was designed around archive and not active retrieval and work. Because they're mainframe based, even though they've been migrated to client server systems and distributed systems, the underlying architecture and foundation of these services, these products, is based upon the mainframe. And complex configurations, and I will give it, the reliability factor is there, but it's also licensed, again, based upon the old mainframe construct. And that's where it was originally developed and originally optimized. So let's take a look at today and what has changed. Modern archives designed for the cloud and mobile, many of which designed as cloud native, no longer restricted to a relational database processing paradigm. So that makes the changes that should be made due to line of business differences quite easy to make. And they're infinitely scalable to billions and billions of documents. And that's what we're talking about here. So based upon new content models, new models for content and protocols, PDF, XML, very sophisticated services layer so that it's easy to integrate this content with line of business applications. Low code and no code configuration tools that are new and flexible, and licensing to fit today's world. Again, optimized for open systems and for the cloud. So did I answer the question, Kevin, or did I go off on a tangent? I do have a tendency to do that.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Harvey, it sounds to me like despite the digitization of many processes and our focus on digital transformation, the fact is that many organizations still rely on a great deal of paper to get the job done, especially in these transactional areas that you mentioned, like invoicing and claims processing and so forth. And much of this content still resides on what we would consider to be legacy systems in formats that are considered to be legacy formats, like you mentioned, AFP and so forth. So getting back to our premise of bringing it all together, a consolidated approach, can you describe a consolidated approach to managing this content, not to mention the other types of content, line of business, different sorts of application-based, process-based content that we all must manage today? Can you describe an approach to consolidating all of this and what's in it for me?
Well, certainly we need to consider migrating the huge amount of content that's in the old system to a new and more modern paradigm. And we take a look at all of the content that's within an organization that we'll call documents. So the more traditional document management system, restricted by design and function, for those documents that are not high volume print ready documents. So it really, the way I like to think of it is, those are the documents that are within an active transaction. It's a claim, it's correspondence between an organization and its customer or member. It's those things that are in active transition, and there's activity around that. The traditional invoice archive, transaction's done. So it's the historical reference point to that. So there's a disparity in design. The document management system or active transaction management system does that workflow and that correspondence with the customer very, very well. But the number of documents stored within a system like that is limited. You're not going to have an active transaction for every one of your 50 million customers if you're a large bank. But you are going to send a statement every month to that customer because that's required. So we've got a difference in scale and a difference in capability between those two systems. Today, with what's happening in the industry as a whole, we have the ability to put both types of content into the same system because they scale infinitely, and we have, quite frankly, the elastic nature of the cloud to bring to bear on that. I mean, let's and I don't want to mention any brand names because that's not what we're here to do. But if we take a look at a typical document management system, very comfortable with millions of documents, very comfortable with versioning those documents and allowing editing and allowing distribution and two-way communication, very comfortable with millions of documents. But when we talk about high volume statements, invoices, and bills, we're not talking about millions of documents. We're talking about, if you'll excuse my quoting Carl Sagan, billions and billions of documents. So we now, with current technology, microservices, elastic computing due to the cloud, we've got the ability to combine those into one system.
All right, well, tell me about that then. What are the advantages of doing that? And what are some steps to actually migrate and consolidate that content that I should include in my plans?
Well, that's exactly it. It is a migration question. We've got to pick one system that we put everything in. And what is that one system?
You're talking about taking everything and putting it into one system.
Exactly.
And what would that one system be? An on-premise system or a cloud-based system? Or...
It would be a cloud-based system. And your question, was, why haven't we done this before? Well, what do we need to do? We need to migrate. And I guess the corollary to that is, why haven't we done it? Why is it so scary for organizations to go that far and do that?
Well, indeed, sounds to me like organizations are actually going in the opposite direction. They're actually adding systems as opposed to consolidating systems.
Well,
so you're proposing something really, putting everything in one place.
I'm proposing somewhat radically different. That adding systems is counterproductive. I mean, the more systems you add, the more expensive it is, the more difficult it is for the people within the organization to use them. And wouldn't it be better, faster, cheaper, easier if we had one system? If we had, again, to quote a popular trilogy, one ring to rule them all, so to speak, right?
All right,
And
so you're suggesting I consolidate all of my transactional business, sort of business transactional content that's happening with my clients sort of actively. I'm a bank, for example. I'm working with my clients. There's correspondence. There's active stuff going on, and then there's also sort of this. It's not an archive per se, but it's the statement sort of processes that go on that might be active with clients that I'm really not. It might be churning away where I'm not really active with clients every day. So there's really kind of two different worlds. Both of them are big in different ways.
yes,
You're suggesting putting them all together in one system. Can you describe that process, that consolidated approach, and what are the steps that you would suggest to really migrate and consolidate that into this system? What are the steps and what kinds of systems do I need to do that?
okay, so let's take it from the top, right? What's the impediment to change? Why are we not doing this? Well, quite frankly, I think this slide describes it all.
Okay.
And you'll notice a theme through the slide. How much does it cost? Is it costly? Yep. Is it disruptive? Well, it doesn't have to be. Is it difficult? Well, everything worthwhile has some amount of difficulty involved in it. It's difficult, but we can do what's 80% planning, 20% execution. It turns out to be not so difficult anymore. And the theme that runs through this entire slide, right, of course, is does it cost a lot? Well, colloquially, it ain't cheap. It's costly.
And what's
It's
the
worth
ROI on that? Then if
But
it's
it's worth
not
it.
expensive, then
Yeah, that's it exactly. It's worth it. It costs a lot, but it's worth it because your return on investment is all the savings you will generate by not having multiple systems. They're all costly.
okay.
Particularly those legacy systems that are mainframe based and still running on the mainframe. You're paying for MIPS. You're paying for refreshing hardware when it becomes necessary. You're paying for significantly. You're paying for special people who know how to run the mainframe and
Okay.
know about the care and feeding, if you will, of that mainframe. So to continue with your question, what's in it for me as far as the customer is concerned? There are several benefits. Certainly reducing cost is an important benefit. Simplifying integration with line of business applications can be another one, where you can access the information stored within the new system from within your line of business application that your people are in all day long. And
Okay.
perhaps the most important benefit is increasing customer satisfaction, because you can, with this new system that we have designed, increase customer satisfaction by being able to deliver the right information to the right person at the right time in the format that person wants to receive it in.
Okay.
So that's kind of the benefits and the end point in this consolidation, is we really do need to consolidate. That approach just simplifies day-to-day business throughout the entire organization, from the foundation of the IP of the application throughout the organization, being able to access all the information that they need to solve, identify, and participate in a customer issue, whether it's with that customer or internal individuals. So I'm painting nirvana here. I mean,
Okay.
absolutely, we all know that that's
Okay.
never the case in the real world, but it's again, I have a tendency to quote a lot of people, but to quote a car manufacturer, it's the relentless pursuit of perfection that gets us closer to that every single day.
All right. So the trick to me then, I see where you're going with this. So in other words, the ROI is in the efficiency of accessing information.
It
And
is.
so to the degree that it makes sense to consolidate this content, the ROI is found by the ability to serve our customers better and do our processes with less effort, if you will. So what are some steps? I've got a lot of content, right? Everywhere
Mhm.
in different databases for different reasons and big stuff and small stuff and intricate stuff. What are some steps to actually migrate and consolidate this content? And then once start getting my arms around that, where do I put it?
So steps involved. Let's all agree that consolidation is where we want to go for all of the reasons that Kevin and I listed. The reduction in cost of the current legacy systems, the improvement of internal processes, the ability to connect to line of business applications, and overall a significant improvement in customer service and customer satisfaction. So, those are significant gains. How do we go about doing that? So, really, I think the right way to do this, as with any significant IT or otherwise project, is it's 80% planning, 20% execution. I think that was Einstein. But what we see is breaking this down into 4 distinct steps, and there are sub steps within each one. But we've got to understand the scope. How much are we dealing with? How many documents are there? How many different types of documents are there? What is the purpose? What is the reason that we stored them in the first place? Is it purely regulatory because the law says we have to store them? Are they stored for customer service issues and customer service concerns? How long do we have to keep them? Is there a records management file plan? We have found as Crawford Tech, in our work in this area, that many organizations store forever. And I will
Yeah.
tell you a story from my past about storing forever. Being from Detroit, if you don't do business, or if you didn't do business with the automotive companies, you might as well not have been in business. So I was fortunate to be the archive of record for a couple of different automotive companies when I ran a service company. So in this story was all around National Traffic Highway Safety Administration, I think is the name of it. Sometimes I forget what all those letters stand for. But it was that government agency that had responsibility for investigating accidents. And it was all around investigating a causal part that created this defect in the overall automobile. So it went, the government agency went after 2 companies. They went after Ford and Chrysler. No secret now, this was, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago. And there was a limit to the time that one had to keep those records, and it was 10 years. And the Ford Motor Company was extremely diligent in records management. The 10 years had expired. They no longer had the documents. They didn't have to produce them because they were within the letter of the law. The other organization, even though the document retention period expired, they still had the documents. They had to produce them. Resulted in a fine of hundreds of millions of dollars. So 80%.
And when was this? Was this just
This
recently?
was-
I'm sorry, Harvey. Was this just
No,
recently?
this was 25 years ago.
25 years ago. Okay.
Yeah, I've been in this business a long time. So it goes back to that planning. You have to understand the scope, and you have to plan and look at what is being done
All right.
within the organization as relates to archive that isn't written down. Because there's a lot of stuff that goes on that's, I call it tribal knowledge. we always did it that way, so we're going to continue to do it that way. And no, it's not written down, but it works, so we do it. When we migrate from one system to the next and we change the ground rules, we need to plan for that. We need to recognize that. And then we need to test our understanding. It's just absolutely critical that we trust, but we verify. And then,
We are here today with Harvey Gross. Harvey is the Senior Vice President of Strategic Sales at Crawford Technologies. We're talking about a consolidated approach to content management, and if indeed we can achieve a single source of truth. So if you have a question for Harvey today, please feel free to enter that into the Q&A feature. I'd love to have some of your questions in the conversation, and we will attempt to get to some of your questions here as well here in just a few minutes. But Harvey, we do have a question. Diane is asking, and thank you, Diane, for your participation today. Diane Wilson asks, please identify how much stuff there is and determine what should be archived versus migrated. Other than legal and HR stuff, info from 12 years ago can be stored offline in case of an audit, not on the network. Harvey, can you help us here? What stuff and where?
Yeah,
and when? Right?
It's a tough one. It's the question sounds simple, but it's really complex. The answer is relatively complex, right? So we have to take a look. Is there a records management file plan? Do we make sure that we're migrating or archiving according to that records management file plan? We also need to take a look at access and retrieval patterns. So which documents, which information is actively accessed and retrieved, and we need to make that decision: archive, migrate, forget about, based upon the usage. That's really the only way we can go ahead and do this in the correct manner, in accordance with the records management file plan.
All right, very good. Another question here, or comment question from John Daly. John, thank you so much. John says it's hard to imagine one enterprise content management system having connectors to all line of business applications. Can you address that, Harvey? How are these connectors put in place in ways to make all this happen?
Well, yeah, I can understand, John. It's hard to imagine, but let your imagination run wild.
Technically, how is it possible?
It's web services. It's a web services methodology that most modern line of business applications employ, and certainly the new archive, if you will, for want of a better system, as a web services methodology for APIs. And because more and more applications are web-based, and I see in the future that probably all of them will be, we have this web services communication methodology that levels the playing field. So if I talk web services and you talk web services, we can talk to each other. Now, I've simplified that, but that is the basic premise, that microservices talking HTTPS can exchange information on that level playing field.
All right, much of the content that you've been talking about, Harvey, is based upon, again, what we might consider legacy print streams, stuff going out that would typically be going out to printers in rather high volumes. These could be statements, explanation of benefits. These are often created in rather proprietary formats that are for the printer environment, whether that's AFP or some sort of Xerox metacode or whatever. These are protocols that have been around for years and years and years.
Yes.
So now I've got an archive of this stuff that you're suggesting that I migrate to a cloud-based platform. Do I migrate them in their native format? And indeed, are there regulations and reasons why I need to keep it in that native format, either for reprinting or for some sort of audit or compliance issues? Or do I transpose them, or convert them into something like some other format that's more storage friendly? Tell me a little bit more about how that works.
Well, okay, so you're absolutely right, Kevin. Those legacy systems were predicated upon the legacy printer definition language, or PDL formats. So we can take and should take that file as it was originally created in that PDL, and we store that in the new system the same way we did in the old system. The old document print file archive systems, the legacy systems such as IBM's and Mobius and RSD and Systemware, some of names of some of the few, they stored them in the printer definition language file, which meant that I had 10, 20, 30, 40,000 statements in the same print file. And those legacy systems stored it that way for a couple of reasons. One, from the standpoint of management, I'm storing one file instead of 40,000 every day, but more in line with the regulatory requirement that you save the information in its original format.
Yeah.
Legal requirement. So that presents a problem for systems other than the legacy archives, because the document management systems, if you will, are predicated upon one document per file.
So that may be
So,
one reason why folks have not consolidated or made this move.
so
What is
how do
the
we
answer?
how do we resolve that? How do we rectify
Yeah.
that? We rectify that with software that has the ability to go into that legacy file based upon where individual documents start and end within that file. So there is software available that will take that, say, AFP file, examine it, extract key indexes from that, and create an index. So I've got the file that contains 40,000 documents. I create 40,000 index rows that indicate the file name, the account number, the name, the address, and all that, and the position within the archive file. So I can jump to an absolute offset into the file where document 462 starts and ends, simplifying the archive, storing the file in its original format, being able to extract the AFP code that is an individual document, and on the fly transform that to PDF or HTML or responsive HTML or accessible PDF based upon customer or user preference.
Okay.
So I think there's a couple of key things here that we need to understand. First of all, we're in compliance with laws and regulations. Secondly, we have the ability to produce the document for the user that the user wants. So suppose the user is a blind or vision impaired individual, and we have recorded the customer preference. So anything extracted from the archive file for that particular customer is transformed into an accessible PDF. Another consideration here, we have some documents that by law we've got to save for 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, but the format of those documents change over time. There was an acquisition, the company name's different. There was a logo change. So we can't use today's form and today's technical term resources to render the document. We've got to look at how the document was rendered originally. Okay. And so this will allow us to do that. It also allows us to kind of future-proof delivery. In particular, accessibility regulations and laws have changed 3 times in the last 5 years.
All right. So speaking of future-proof, of course, our technologists are all wondering about the technology to get all this done, and certainly things like AI and robotic process automation, machine learning are on the top of mind of everyone today. One question coming in is, does Crawford Technologies employ any robotic process automation tools for triggering and enabling this process with or from systems?
Well,
You know, well, this is hard to do. Is there an automated approach or some sort of
yeah,
triggered approach to
I
this?
mean, we're not doing RPA. We really don't do robotic process automation, although we do have some automated workflow and process control software. Primarily, what we have been investing our development resources in over the last while is a product that wrapped around AI and ML that will examine a document and decide what the key fields are that are required for processing and retrieval. So the old school method, we put a document up on the screen and we use the mouse to rubber band a field, and that's what we would extract as an index key. And we would base that upon the line and position that that field appeared, and one or perhaps more triggers of other strings, if you will, on the document. So we
almost like zonal OCR.
well, it's not. It's not necessarily. It's not OCR because it's already in text. It's already code. We don't have to do anything optically, right? But we would see on a document it says invoice, and we knew that within three spaces after the word invoice and a colon, we'd have an invoice number.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So we've carried that, half a dozen steps further, and we recognize the format of certain things within a document that need to be identified: address blocks, invoice number, member number, expiration date. So old school, just take the mouse and rubber band that stuff and define the trigger, right?
All right.
Well, and a trained person would take at least a couple of hours, and oftentimes 3 or 4, to get that done for an individual application, because there are other things involved. There's barcodes and there's translations and all that other stuff. So with our product that we, again, a real imaginative name, we call it Smart Setup. We take a document file and we throw it at Smart Setup, and 30 to 40 seconds later, we have all these index keys identified.
Well, tell us a little bit more about how all this plays out in the real world. Can you give us an example of one organization or use case that has been successful with this consolidated approach to content management? What did they do and what were the results?
Well, with the consolidated approach, outside of Smart Setup and all that other stuff, let me rifle through my screen where I have I believe I have an example. A property and casualty insurance company whose name I cannot mention, but may be identifiable by this. They had some specific things they wanted to achieve because of the migration. And they migrated to a new platform. They took the stored AFP, and they made the decision to transform and save the information as individual PDFs for specific line of business applications. But overall, they stored the AFP. It was in a different part of the world, a different continent. So that migration was designed, performed, and monitored remotely. And we simultaneously managed multiple projects for migration and day forward. So not only do you need to migrate existing documents from your legacy system, you need to design and build the process to handle day forward at the same time, so the two are alike. We migrate legacy documents using specific indexing and metadata criteria. We have to make sure the day forward matches that. So we used a couple of different products, off-the-shelf products, to do this. And I think it's very important to stress the fact that they're off-the-shelf products. They're not custom designed for a specific migration case. They've been in use for 20 years. So tried, true, and proven. So at the end of the day, what was the result? What were the business results? And it's all about the simplification and a more straightforward way of attacking the day-to-day business. Simplified the core infrastructure and reduced the number of document repositories to about 3 from, I believe it was 15 time. Eliminated the expense on the mainframe, retired end-of-life hardware, moved prime shift file conversion that they had to do off the mainframe because we eliminated that expense. So there are other ancillary benefits that happened for this particular company, but those are the main ones, that they reduced the number of repositories and the inherent complexity in that, dramatically reduced expense, and retired out-of-date hardware that they were having to shop eBay for spare parts.
All right, we are here with Harvey Gross, Senior Vice President of Strategic Sales at Crawford Technologies. You can find him and find out more at crawfordtech.com. Harvey, how does Crawford help with all of this? Are there some resources or some next steps that you can recommend?
Well, certainly, I can, and they are in the information that Teresa released. There's
Popping up in our chat feature right now.
Yeah, exactly. So a couple of case studies, a white paper or two, and some thoughts with regards, blog entries. I think that what I'd like to kind of reinforce is this, the fact that the steps, if you'll excuse the pun, really need to be followed to get this kind of thing done efficiently, productively, and at as low a cost as is possible. It's got to be 80% planning, 20% execution. You have to scope it and do a proper assessment. You have to test your findings to ensure that you made the assessment is correct and the plan is functional. You do an extract and transform, and you make sure that you audit every step of the process. You need to make sure that if you take 50,000 documents from the source system, you put 50,000 documents into the target system. And because some of these things have been around for 10, 15, even 20 years, you need to make sure that the integrity of the source system is such that you want to move it to the target system. It has been our experience that oftentimes we have documents without indices, and we have indices without associated documents. And there are reasons for this. Some of those reasons are valid, but some aren't. And we need to identify those and go back to the organization and say, okay, here's what we found. This is what we think happened. Does this make sense based upon your business processes? And what do you want to do to correct it? Because it's not simple lift and shift. That doesn't work. We have the opportunity due to this kind of migration to correct errors that have been there for 10 years. And nobody knew how to correct them because the integrity of the system might have been compromised. So we have an opportunity now to make up for past sins.
Well, Harvey, that's fantastic. The planning is so ever important with any of these sorts of process improvements and transformational initiatives. So thank you for that. That is Harvey Gross, Senior Vice President of Strategic Sales at Crawford Technologies. Harvey, thank you so much for being with us today. And at this point, folks, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Teresa to help close us out. Teresa?
Thanks. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, Harvey. And I'm going to come back to you, Harvey, one more time before we close. And I know we've been grilling you with some really tough questions on here, but it's been very helpful to get, and I know a lot of Kevin's questions were not planned. And so thank you for the honest assessment. And
Okay.
thank you to everybody in our audience who is just giving a whole lot of added insight. One of the things that I just, well, just to mention to you all, you're not already a member of AIM, join our thriving community at AIM Plus. And also AIM Plus Pro offers that member-only community along with a robust library of over 35 lessons in a variety of information management topics. And I can say in there are a number of lessons that helps you through migration projects. And so as we've been talking about here, 80% is in the planning, and it's so important to do that part. And so go to AIM Plus Pro for lessons to help you through that, so that implementations that you would do like you would with Crawford Technologies can be successful for your organization. So for that, address is up on the screen, aim.org/aim-plus. Then also one of the things that we are so proud to say, yes, 24, it is less than 6 months away. And it's the first week of April. We're going to be in San Antonio, Texas. Go to aimconference.com. Start your budgets right now so that you can attend in AIM 24. This is the time to make those requests for next year's budget. Our registration is open. And by the end of this month, we're going to have the agenda up on our website. So you'll have all the information you need to make the case to your boss and to get you and your colleagues to come to AIM 24. And I look forward to seeing you there with that. So as we bring our event to a close, again, check out the resources. Harvey provided some really good links to some very specific articles in there. There's also a link in there to Crawford Technologies customer success stories. And I was reading through those, and there was some really good insight in there to help you out with that. And I very much want to thank our underwriter, Crawford Technologies. Without the support of our solution providers, AIM wouldn't be able to bring you these free educational programs. So thank you, Crawford Tech, for that. And like I said, Harvey, I'm coming back to you now, looking for a closing thought or a key takeaway. So, Harvey, your thoughts here.
Oh boy, you're putting me on the spot, Doris. You really are. The closing thought overall with regards to the whole subject, don't take a look at an initiative like this as too complicated to get done. There are techniques. There are people who can help. There are people who have done this successfully and rue the day that they decided to postpone it till next year. If you'll never get finished if you don't get started. And recognizing the opportunity and the advantages of getting this done. Start now. Start the planning. Planning doesn't cost a whole lot of money. So let's scope it, see if it makes sense, and don't get scared because it's complicated. There are people who have done this and done this successfully and are thrilled that they did.
Thank you. That's Harvey Gross from Crawford Technologies. And Kevin Crane, your closing thoughts today.
Well, thanks, Teresa. I want to thank Harvey for a great interview. Thank you so much. I hope we get a chance to talk again soon. And look, as I said earlier, we've got to address the challenges of content integration, things like team collaboration, data silos, in order to really make the most of intelligent, if we have the intelligent in our information management. So these conversations with AIM, I think, lead that discussion. It's been another great discussion today. So thanks, everybody, for being with us.
Thank you,
Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Harvey. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. For AIM, I'm Teresa Resick, and we will see you with our next event. Have a great afternoon.
Bye, everybody.